Glass shattered as Maya Wilson stood frozen, heart pounding against her ribs. The laser sights dancing across her dark skin weren't from police badges, but something more sinister. Little did these armed intruders know the former military intelligence specialist they cornered was their worst nightmare. Before we dive into this incredible story of survival against racist attackers, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of justice and resilience. How would you react if armed men broke into your home in the middle of the night? Stay tuned to see how Maya turned the tables on those who thought she was an easy target. Maya Wilson had never imagined her peaceful life in suburban Atlanta would become a battleground. At 38, the decorated Army intelligence veteran had transitioned to civilian life as a cybersecurity consultant after 12 grueling years, specializing in counterintelligence operations across Afghanistan and Iraq. Her decision to purchase a home in the exclusive Oakwood Estates gated community had been simple enough. The property was beautiful, the neighborhood safe, and the location convenient for her consulting work with several major corporations in the city. What she hadn't anticipated was becoming the first black homeowner in a community that seemed determined to maintain its homogeneous character. Maya's military background had prepared her for many things, but the subtle and sometimes not so subtle hostility from her neighbors tested even her considerable patience. Her 2 Belgian Malinois Thunder and Storm had been her constant companions since her final deployment. More than pets, they were highly trained security assets with military backgrounds of their own, capable of responding to over 50 commands in multiple languages, and trained to neutralize threats without lethal force unless necessary. They provided both protection and comfort in her increasingly hostile environment. The first signs of trouble began shortly after her moving trucks departed. While arranging her home office, Maya noticed several neighbors slowing their cars to stare at her property, their expressions shifting from curiosity to something harder when they caught sight of her. Within the first week, she received her first welcome letter in her mailbox. Unsigned and typed in blocky text, it suggested she might be more comfortable in a neighborhood that better reflects your background. Maya had tucked it away, a habit ingrained from her intelligence days. Document everything. The memory of her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind as she filed the letter away. Growing up in Harlem under her grandmother's stern but loving care, Maya had learned early that as a black woman, she would need to be twice as prepared, twice as smart, and twice as cautious. "They'll try to make you feel small," her grandmother had told her. "Your job is to stand so tall they have to crane their necks to look at you." The threatening letters continued escalating in both frequency and hostility. "Find somewhere more appropriate to live" became "We don't want your kind here," and finally, "Leave or face consequences." Maya documented each one meticulously. 3 weeks after moving in, the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association called an emergency meeting. Maya attended sitting straight-backed in the community center as Charles Whitfield, the HOA president, discussed concerns about maintaining neighborhood character and property values. His eyes flicked to her repeatedly as he spoke about elements that might disrupt the established community. Several other homeowners nodded in agreement, casting sidelong glances at the only black face in the room. One woman, who introduced herself as Catherine Prescott from 3 doors down, spoke directly. "We've maintained certain standards in Oakwood Estates for 15 years. We just want to ensure those standards continue." The implied message couldn't have been clearer if she'd used a bullhorn. That night, Maya installed additional security cameras around her property. Her military training had taught her to recognize escalating threat patterns, and every instinct warned her that the situation would worsen. She was proven right the following morning when she discovered racial slurs spray-painted across her garage door in vivid red letters. Maya called the police, and that's when she met Detective James Rodriguez. Unlike the dismissive patrol officers who arrived, first Rodriguez took detailed notes and photographs. "This is unacceptable, Ms. Wilson," he said, his expression grim. "I've seen this pattern before. These types of intimidation tactics often escalate, if not addressed." "Are you suggesting I move?" Maya asked, studying his reaction. Rodriguez shook his head. "I'm suggesting you stay vigilant and document everything, and I'll do my best to investigate, though I should warn you," he lowered his voice, "there are elements in the department who won't consider this a priority." Later that evening, Maya's brother Marcus called. A military doctor stationed at Fort Benning, he checked in regularly since her move. "How's suburban life treating you?" he asked. Maya could hear the concern beneath his casual tone. She debated sugarcoating the situation but decided against it. They'd never lied to each other. "About as well as you'd expect," she replied, describing the escalating harassment. "I can be there tomorrow, Marcus offered immediately. "You don't need to handle this alone." "Not yet," Maya said, though the offer tempted her. "But keep your weekend open. I have a feeling things might get worse before they get better." As she ended the call, Maya walked the perimeter of her home, checking locks and security systems with thunder and storm at her heels. The dog sensed her tension, staying close and alert. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was preparing for a battle, one that would come, whether she wanted it or not. Thunder nudged her hand with his nose, and Maya scratched behind his ears. "We've faced worse, haven't we, boys?" she murmured. But even as she said it, she wondered if that was true. Combat zones had clear enemies and objectives. Here the threat lurked behind friendly smiles and community meetings, hidden but no less dangerous. Maya checked her security feeds one last time before bed, noting a car driving slowly past her house for the third time that evening. She zoomed in on the license plate and added it to her growing documentation. Whatever was coming, she would be ready. The next morning, Maya reviewed her security footage and noticed something disturbing. Between 2 and 4 a.m., unmarked vehicles had parked across from her home for nearly 30 minutes before departing. The occupants never exited, but she could make out silhouettes of men inside, apparently watching her property. Maya compiled the footage and took it to the local police station, asking to speak with Detective Rodriguez. Instead, she was met by a desk sergeant who barely glanced at her evidence before sliding it back across the counter. "Probably just teenagers or delivery drivers taking a break," he said dismissively. "This is a safe neighborhood, ma'am. No need to be paranoid." The emphasis he placed on safe carried clear implications. Maya kept her expression neutral, despite the fury building inside her. "I'd still like this documented, and I'd like to speak with Detective Rodriguez." The sergeant's smile thinned. "Detective Rodriguez is unavailable. I can take your complaint, but I wouldn't expect much. We have real crimes to investigate." Maya left the station with her concerns unaddressed, but her suspicions confirmed. Something wasn't right with the local police response. She needed allies. That afternoon, she called Darius Jackson, a former colleague from her military days who now operated a private security firm in Atlanta. They met at a coffee shop 20 miles from her neighborhood, away from prying eyes. Darius embraced her warmly before sitting across from her, his expression serious. "It's been a while, Wilson. You're looking good, but that's not why you called me after all this time." Maya slid a flash drive across the table. "I need your expertise, and possibly your resources." As Darius reviewed her evidence on his laptop, his expression darkened. "This is organized harassment, Maya. These aren't random neighborhood racists. This is coordinated." He pointed to timestamps on the surveillance footage. "Military precision in their movements, and these vehicles have government plates with partially obscured numbers." The observation triggered a memory from her deployment in Baghdad, when Maya had saved her unit from an ambush by noticing similar inconsistencies in what appeared to be an Iraqi police checkpoint. She'd spotted the irregularities in their uniforms and positioning, allowing her team to retreat and call in air support before the disguised insurgents could spring their trap. Someone with access and resources wants you gone. Darius continued, interrupting her thoughts. And they're getting impatient. That evening, Maya discovered her security system had been tampered with. The main control panel appeared normal, but when she ran a diagnostic check, she found evidence of someone attempting to access the system remotely. As she worked to reinforce her digital defenses, a sharp knock at her front door startled her. Through the security monitor, she saw Charles Whitfield standing on her porch, his pleasant smile contradicted by the coldness in his eyes. Maya considered ignoring him, but decided confrontation might yield useful information. She signaled Thunder and Storm to alert positions out of sight and opened the door, keeping the security chain engaged. "Mr. Whitfield, what can I do for you this evening?" "Ms. Wilson." His smile remained fixed. "The HOA has received complaints about your dogs. Several neighbors have expressed concerns about such aggressive breeds in our family-friendly community." Maya knew this was a fabrication. Thunder and Storm were never outside without her, and they were impeccably trained. "My dogs are service animals with specialized training. They're registered and compliant with all county regulations." Whitfield's smile didn't waver. "Nevertheless, the HOA has rules about pets that could pose a danger to residents. We're simply looking out for community safety." The emphasis he placed on safety echoed the desk sergeant's tone. "Is that what this is about, safety?" Maya asked, holding his gaze. Something flickered behind Whitfield's eyes. "Of course. This community has remained safe for years because we're vigilant about who and what we allow in. I hope you understand that we'll take whatever measures necessary to keep it that way." The threat was unmistakable. After he left, Maya conducted a background check on Charles Whitfield, something she should have done earlier. What she discovered disturbed her deeply. Whitfield was former law enforcement discharged from the Atlanta Police Department 15 years ago. The records were partially sealed, but with her security clearance and contacts, Maya uncovered the truth. Whitfield had been forced to resign after multiple excessive force complaints against black suspects. More disturbing were his connections to a known white supremacist group that had rebranded itself as a Heritage Preservation Society. That night, Thunder and Storm alerted to movement outside. Maya checked her security feeds to see a figure prowling around her property's perimeter, staying just at the edge of the camera range. The person seemed to be testing her security responses, retreating when motion-activated lights came on. In the morning, she found boot prints in the soft soil of her garden and discovered one of her external cameras had been disabled. Maya called Detective Rodriguez, but reached his voicemail. An hour later, he called from an unknown number. "Ms. Wilson, I can't speak long. I've been reassigned to another district effective immediately. No explanation given, but it happened right after I started looking into your case." His voice lowered. "Be careful. There's something happening in that department that doesn't feel right. I'm still looking into it, but unofficially." "Thank you for the warning," Maya said, her suspicions confirmed. "Is there anyone in the department I can trust?" The lengthy pause told her everything. "Document everything," Rodriguez finally said, "and consider reaching out to county or state authorities instead." After the call, Maya began preparing in earnest. She mapped her entire property, identifying defensive positions and potential vulnerabilities. She established multiple backup power sources, secured alternate communication methods, and prepared emergency medical supplies. As she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was preparing for war on American soil. The realization was both absurd and terrifying. Maya positioned non-lethal defensive measures throughout her home interior and grounds with the strategic precision she'd once applied to military operations. Thunder and Storm watched her work, their alertness reflecting her own growing tension. "They think I'll run, Ubu," she told the dogs as she finished her preparations. "They have no idea who they're dealing with." As Maya expanded her investigation into Charles Whitfield, disturbing connections emerged that painted a picture far more sinister than simple neighborhood racism. Whitfield's dismissal from the Atlanta Police Department hadn't just been about excessive force. According to documents she obtained through her military connections, he had been part of an unofficial police unit that systematically targeted minority neighborhoods for harassment and false arrests. His discharge had been quietly arranged to avoid department scandal. More troubling was what he'd done after leaving the force. Using his police connections, Whitfield had established a private security company that exclusively served wealthy, predominantly white neighborhoods. This company, Secure Communities, Inc., operated with tacit support from certain elements within local law enforcement. But what raised Maya's alarm to critical levels was discovering that 4 current police officers in her district had previously worked for Whitfield's company. Could they still be taking orders from him? Would you stay and fight against a corrupt system targeting you for your race, or would you choose safety and move away? Comment number 1, if you'd stand your ground like Maya, or number 2, if you'd protect yourself by leaving. Like and subscribe to follow Maya's dangerous journey against these corrupt forces. How far would these former police officers go to maintain their vision of a pure community? The answer was about to become frighteningly clear. 2 days after her confrontation with Whitfield, Maya received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Elaine Johnson, a black woman who lived 2 blocks away, knocked on her door looking visibly nervous. "I saw what they did to your garage," she said after Maya invited her in. "The same thing happened when I moved in last year." Over coffee, Dr. Johnson revealed that she'd been the first black homeowner in Oakwood Estates until Maya arrived. "They made my life hell for months. Anonymous threats, property damage police, stopping me for routine checks whenever I drove through the neighborhood." "Why did it stop?" Maya asked, noting how Thunder and Storm had accepted the woman's presence without alarm. "It didn't exactly stop," Dr. Johnson explained. "It just became more subtle. But I think they shifted their focus when you moved in. You're more visible since your house is near the main entrance. Mine is tucked away in the back." Together, they identified 5 other minority families who had attempted to move into Oakwood Estates over the past decade. None had stayed longer than 6 months. "They leave because of job transfers or family emergencies," Dr. Johnson said. "But I've spoken with 2 of them. The reality was constant harassment until they couldn't take it anymore." The pattern was clear. Oakwood Estates was being deliberately kept white through an organized campaign of intimidation. And from what Maya could determine, local law enforcement was at best turning a blind eye and at worst actively participating. Maya's military training in tactical defense and psychological warfare had prepared her for many scenarios, but she had never expected to deploy those skills in an American suburb. Yet as she connected with Dr. Johnson and began documenting the broader pattern of harassment, she found herself drawing on those very skills. Her intelligence background provided another crucial advantage. Maya discovered unauthorized access attempts to her personal records, including her military service history and financial information. The intrusions were sophisticated, but left digital fingerprints she could trace back to the local police department's network. When Detective Rodriguez was suddenly reassigned, Maya's last official ally within the system vanished. That's when Darius called with news that elevated the threat to critical levels. "I've got a contact inside the department," he said, his voice tense. "They're planning something big, Maya, some kind of operation centered on your address scheduled for later this week." "Police operation?" Maya asked, already knowing the answer. "Technically, yes, but completely off the books. My source says a group of officers is working with Whitfield. They're calling it community protection, but this isn't sanctioned by department leadership." That evening, Maya installed additional covert surveillance throughout her property and house. She positioned equipment in ways that would be difficult for even trained searchers to detect, ensuring she would have evidence of whatever occurred. She also prepared multiple secure channels to automatically upload video and audio feeds to remote servers. The next morning, her brother Marcus arrived unannounced, military duffel in hand. "Don't argue," he said before she could speak. I took emergency leave, and I brought supplies." The medical supplies he unpacked told Maya everything about his expectations for the coming days. Combat trauma kits, suture sets, antibiotics, and pain management medications all spoke to his concern. "You're expecting casualties," she observed. Marcus met her eyes steadily. "I'm hoping for none, but I've learned to prepare for worst-case scenarios." That night they began sleeping in shifts. Maya took the first watch patrolling her home's perimeter with Thunder, while Storm remained inside with the sleeping Marcus. As she completed her circuit, a neighbor's security light illuminated her momentarily. From a nearby window, she caught a glimpse of Charles Whitfield watching her phone to his ear. Their eyes met briefly before he stepped back into darkness. The message was clear. The countdown had begun. "Do you believe police departments do enough to root out corrupt officers who abuse their power against minorities?" Comment number 1, if you think police need more accountability, or number 2, if you think the current systems work. Hit that like button and subscribe to see how Maya prepares to defend herself against this corrupt network. What would you do if you discovered local authorities were conspiring against you instead of protecting you? Maya's night of reckoning is approaching faster than she realizes. At 1:50 a.m., the first alert came through Maya's phone. The perimeter sensors she'd installed detected signal jammers activating within 100 yards of her property. Standard police procedure before a high-risk entry designed to prevent suspects from calling for help or receiving warnings. But this was no standard police operation. Maya moved with practiced efficiency, sending emergency notifications through channels the jammers couldn't block. Military-grade mesh network transmitters would ensure her evidence reached secure servers regardless of what happened next. "Marcus," she called softly, already moving to predetermined positions. Her brother awoke instantly, military training evident in his immediate alertness. "It's starting. Jammers active." He nodded, reaching for the medical pack he'd kept beside the guest bed. "Thunderstorm positions," Maya commanded. The Belgian Malinois moved silently to their assigned locations. Thunder took up position in the master bedroom closet, hidden but with clear sightlines to the hallway. Storm concealed himself in the kitchen pantry, ready to emerge from an unexpected angle if needed. Both dogs were wearing specialized tactical vests Maya had acquired through military connections, providing protection while maintaining their mobility. At precisely 2 a.m., Maya's exterior cameras captured 6 men in tactical gear approaching her property from multiple angles. They moved with the coordination of trained operators, using hand signals and maintaining precise formations. But Maya's trained eye spotted inconsistencies immediately. Their equipment was mixed, some military grade and some standard police issue. Their movements lacked the discipline of a professional tactical team. Most tellingly, they disabled her visible security cameras but missed the covert ones she'd hidden, specifically anticipating this scenario. The first breach came at the rear patio door. The reinforced glass shattered under a battering ram, and 3 men entered in tactical formation weapons raised with laser sights sweeping the darkness. Maya had cut power to most of the house, but left specific areas dimly lit to control the intruders' movements. From her concealed position in the hallway alcove, she observed their entry through her night vision monocular. "Police hands up!" one shouted, but Maya noticed he didn't identify a specific department. The other 2 began a sweep of the kitchen and living room areas, moving with the confidence of men who expected an easy target. Maya activated her phone, triggering a pre-recorded message to play from speakers in multiple rooms simultaneously. Her own voice, calm and authoritative, filled the house. "This property is under surveillance. Unauthorized entry has been detected and recorded. Law enforcement has been notified." The intruders hesitated clearly, surprised by the response. Then their radios crackled, and Maya heard a voice she recognized immediately. Charles Whitfield. "Proceed as planned. No witnesses. Make it look right." The intruders exchanged glances, and one replied, "Copy that, proceeding to secure the target." Any doubt about their intentions vanished with that exchange. This wasn't a legitimate police operation. It was an execution disguised as a raid. The men split up, one heading toward the master bedroom, while two others moved toward Maya's position. As they passed the kitchen pantry, Maya gave a silent hand signal. Storm burst from his hiding place, a black shadow moving with frightening speed. Before the nearest intruder could react, the dog had clamped onto his weapon arm with precisely controlled pressure, trained to disable without causing permanent damage unless commanded otherwise. The man screamed, dropping his weapon as Storm forced him to the ground. The momentary chaos gave Maya the opening she needed. She emerged from concealment using non-lethal takedown techniques honed through years of special operations training. The second intruder turned toward the commotion, and Maya struck pressure points in rapid succession. He collapsed, momentarily paralyzed, but conscious. The third man, hearing the disruption, rushed back from the bedroom hallway, weapon raised. "Stand down!" he shouted, laser sight dancing across Maya's dark skin. Federal agents, but Maya had already identified the inconsistencies in his gear. Federal agents don't coordinate with HOA presidents, she replied calmly, holding her position, and they identify themselves before breaking down doors. The man's expression flickered with surprise, then hardened. "Just take the shot," came Whitfield's voice through the radio. "Make sure the black bitch doesn't leave alive." In the moment of hesitation that followed, Thunder emerged silently from the master bedroom behind the man. At Maya's hand signal, the dog leapt, taking the intruder down with precision that spoke to years of specialized training. Within minutes, Maya had secured 3 incapacitated intruders. Using their own zip ties, she restrained them efficiently, then began a systematic search. What she found confirmed her worst suspicions. Their police identification was genuine for some, false for others. More damning was the packet of drugs and unregistered weapons she found in one man's backpack, clearly intended to be discovered in her home after her death. "Plant and sanitize," read the handwritten note accompanying these items. "Standard procedure." One of the men regained his composure enough to speak. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, lady. We're police officers conducting a legitimate raid." "Is that why you cut communication lines before entering?" Maya asked, holding up the man's radio. "Or why your instructions mentioned no witnesses? Or perhaps you'd like to explain these?" She held up the planted evidence bags. The man's eyes widened slightly before his expression closed. "Lawyer, huh?" he muttered. But the youngest of the 3, barely 25 by Maya's estimation, looked increasingly terrified. She focused her attention on him. "This operation isn't sanctioned, is it?" "You're not here with official orders." "We were told it was a special task force operation," he said, voice unsteady. "Whitfield said you were a drug dealer using your security business as a front, that you had connections protecting you within the department. And you believe that without seeing a warrant or official documentation." The young man's silence was answer enough. Maya checked her security feeds and saw 3 more men approaching from the front of the house. "Back up." The night was far from over. "Marcus, yes," she called. "We're going to have company. Prepare for wounded." Maya positioned herself strategically as the front door lock was being breached. The real battle was just beginning. As the second team breached her front door, Maya activated the next phase of her home defense system. Motion sensors triggered pre-recorded sounds of movement throughout different areas of the house, creating the impression of multiple occupants. Simultaneously, strategic light, each activated and deactivated in patterns designed to disorient intruders. The 3 new attackers hesitated at the threshold, momentarily confused by the sensory disruption. Maya used their hesitation to her advantage. From her concealed position behind a reinforced bookcase, she triggered a non-lethal defensive measure. A modified flashbang device, less powerful than military grade but sufficient for her purposes, detonated in the foyer. The intruders recoiled temporarily, blinded and disoriented. "Thunder, engage," Maya commanded softly into her tactical microphone. From his new position upstairs, Thunder launched into action, racing down the stairs with controlled aggression. The 90-pound Belgian Malinois targeted the lead intruder, knocking him backward and disarming him in one fluid movement before retreating to a defensive position. The military precision of the dog's attack spoke to thousands of hours of specialized training. The remaining two intruders recovered enough to raise their weapons, but found themselves in a tactical dilemma. The house's layout, manipulated by Maya's strategic use of lighting and sound, made it impossible to identify clear targets. They could hear movement from multiple directions, but couldn't pinpoint any specific threat. Split up, ordered one, gesturing for his partner to check the dining room while he moved toward the kitchen. Maya smiled grimly. Dividing their forces was exactly what she'd wanted. The moment the intruders separated, Maya moved. Using the house layout she knew by heart, she circled behind the man heading for the kitchen. Before he could react, she applied a precision choke hold, controlling his descent to avoid noise as he lost consciousness. One down. Across the house, Storm had been silently tracking the second intruder. As the man cautiously entered the dining room, Storm emerged from beneath the table, clamping down on the intruder's weapon arm with carefully calibrated pressure. The man's scream was cut short as Maya appeared, disarming him with a swift strike to pressure points that temporarily numbed his arm. "Who sent you what?" she demanded, securing his wrists with zip ties. "You know who," the man spat. "Whitfield runs this show. Half the department's on his payroll or owes him favors." "Why target me specifically?" The man laughed harshly. "You really don't get it, do you? You're not just black in a white neighborhood. You're black with military intelligence background and enough training to notice what's happening. You're the worst kind of threat to their operation." Maya secured the third intruder, who was just regaining consciousness from Thunder's attack. With 5 of the 6 initial attackers now restrained, she conducted a more thorough search of their equipment. What she found confirmed her worst fears. Beyond the planted evidence, she discovered documentation of previous operations against other minority homeowners. Photos, addresses, and disturbing notes about making incidents look like accidents or justified police responses. One file particularly chilled her. Labeled Wilson Maya Priority Target, it contained surveillance photos of her taken over several weeks, along with detailed notes about her schedule security systems and even psychological assessments describing her as dangerous and requires permanent solution. Maya's military training had prepared her for combat zones in foreign countries, but nothing had prepared her for discovering an assassination plot against her on American soil, coordinated by former and current law enforcement. As she processed this information, Marcus called softly from the back of the house where he was monitoring the restrained intruders. "Maya, you need to see this." He held up a police radio he'd taken from one of the men. "They're calling for backup, using official channels." Maya checked her security feeds and felt her stomach tighten. 2 police cruisers were approaching, the neighborhood entrance lights flashing, but sirens silent. Whether they were legitimate officers responding to reports of disturbance or more of Whitfield's corrupt network, she couldn't be certain. What was clear was that the situation was escalating beyond her ability to contain it. Maya retrieved her secure phone and activated the emergency protocol she'd established with Darius. All evidence would now stream directly to his servers, along with those of 2 investigative journalists and a civil rights attorney she had contacted as insurance. Whatever happened next, the truth would not disappear. "Marcus, we need to prepare for the next wave," she said, checking Thunder and Storm for any injuries. Both dogs were alert and unharmed, positioned protectively near the restrained intruders. "This is about to get complicated." As if confirming her assessment, the police radio crackled to life. All units proceed with caution. Armed and dangerous suspect has assaulted police officers during execution of warrant. Authorization for necessary force granted. The voice belonged to a police dispatcher, but Maya detected the slight tension indicating someone reading from a script rather than responding to an actual situation. Whitfield was escalating using official channels to legitimize his attack. The false warrant they'd prepared would be enough to justify deadly force to officers unaware of the broader conspiracy. Maya had minutes at most to prepare for what was coming. She looked at the restrained men, then at Marcus. "We need one of them to talk, now." Marcus nodded grimly. "The young one. He's scared, not committed." Maya approached the youngest attacker, who watched her with wide eyes. "You have about 3 minutes to make a choice," she told him. "Either you tell me exactly who's involved and what the real operation is, or you go down for attempted murder conspiracy and civil rights violations when my evidence goes public." She held up her phone, showing him the live stream of their own incriminating conversations. "Your choice. Prison for decades or cooperation." The young man's resolve crumbled. "Whitfield runs everything," he said, words tumbling out rapidly. "He's got a network inside the department. They identify problem residents in target neighborhoods and find ways to remove them. Usually it's just harassment until they leave voluntarily, but you—" He swallowed hard. "You were designated Category 5, maximum response." "Because I'm black." The man shook his head. "Not just that. Because you documented everything, because you have military training, because you could expose the whole operation. Whitfield said you're the type who wouldn't run, who'd fight back legally. That makes you dangerous." As he continued revealing details of the operation, Maya formulated her next move. The approaching police cars represented either the greatest threat or her best chance for survival, depending on whether they were part of Whitfield's network or legitimate officers. Either way, she needed to control the narrative from the moment they arrived. Maya positioned Thunder and Storm, strategically ensuring the dogs would remain hidden but able to respond if needed. She instructed Marcus to secure himself in a reinforced safe room with the evidence and maintain the remote uploads. Then she prepared to face whatever came through her door next. The dogs tensed, sensing movement outside. Maya checked her security feed one last time. The police cruisers had arrived, and 4 officers were approaching her front door, weapons drawn. Behind them, barely visible in the shadows, stood Charles Whitfield, watching with anticipation. The next few minutes would determine everything. As the legitimate police officers approached Maya's house, she made a critical decision. Rather than confronting them directly, she activated the home's external speakers. "Attention, officers," her voice rang out clearly in the night. "This property is under attack by individuals impersonating police. I have 5 intruders restrained inside who broke in with intent to harm. I am a military veteran exercising my right to defend my home. I am unarmed and willing to cooperate with legitimate law enforcement." The approaching officers hesitated clearly, not expecting this response. Maya continued, "Be advised that everything occurring on this property is being live-streamed to multiple secure locations. Charles Whitfield, who is currently standing behind your position, orchestrated this attack and can be heard on captured audio ordering my death." She saw the officers turn toward Whitfield, who had stepped back into shadows. This moment of confusion gave Maya the opening she needed. She electronically transmitted selected audio clips from the intruder's communications to the officer's vehicle speakers. Whitfield's voice echoed clearly, "Make sure the black bitch doesn't leave alive," followed by, "Plant the evidence and sanitize the scene. Standard procedure." The officer's body language changed instantly, weapons now scanning in multiple directions as they processed this new information. One officer spoke into his radio, requesting immediate backup and a superior officer at the scene. Maya had created enough doubt to prevent an immediate assault on her home. Inside, Maya moved quickly to extract more information from the young officer who had started talking. "Tell me about the previous operations," she demanded. "How many others have there been?" The man's face paled. "At least 7 in the past 3 years, mostly harassment campaigns, but 3 were more aggressive. Fatal," Maya pressed. He nodded reluctantly. 2 were made to look like break-ins gone wrong. 1 was a drug raid where the suspect resisted arrest, all minority homeowners in upscale neighborhoods. Maya felt cold fury rising within her. Names, dates, locations, every detail you can remember. As he spoke, Maya recorded everything, creating a comprehensive picture of Whitfield's network and operations. The pattern was clear and devastating. Whitfield had created a shadow operation within the police department, identifying minority homeowners in wealthy white neighborhoods and systematically driving them out. Those who resisted faced escalating consequences, ultimately including deadly accidents or justified police shootings. These operations were supported by a network of corrupt officers and civilian collaborators, all dedicated to maintaining what Whitfield called neighborhood purity. When you hear about systematic racism like this, operating within police departments, does it make you question how many similar operations might exist in other cities? Comment number 1 if you believe this is an isolated problem, or number 2 if you think this represents a wider issue in American law enforcement. Like and subscribe to see how Maya exposes this corrupt network. What would it take to truly reform a system where such abuses can flourish unchecked? Another crucial piece of the puzzle fell into place when Maya discovered documentation linking Whitfield's operations to property acquisitions. After driving out minority homeowners, properties were quickly purchased by shell companies at below-market values, then resold at significant profits. The financial beneficiaries included several high-ranking police officials and local politicians. The conspiracy extended far beyond simple racism into organized criminal activity for financial gain. As Maya processed this information, memories of her military career flashed through her mind. Throughout her years of service, she had encountered institutional racism in subtle and overt forms. Passed over for promotions despite exemplary performance reviews. Questioned about her qualifications despite having superior credentials to her white counterparts. Required to prove herself repeatedly while others were given the benefit of the doubt. But she had persevered, using her intelligence and determination to rise through the ranks despite the obstacles. Now, in civilian life, she faced the same battle, but with deadlier stakes. Outside, the situation was evolving quickly. Additional police vehicles had arrived, including a supervisor's SUV. Through her security feeds, Maya observed the initial officers briefing the newcomers, gesturing toward Whitfield, who appeared to be arguing vehemently. Then, something unexpected happened. 2 officers approached Whitfield and appeared to place him in handcuffs, leading him to a patrol car despite his protests. A small victory, but Maya knew the night was far from over. Her suspicions were confirmed when her security system detected radio communications indicating that members of Whitfield's network were calling for backup of their own. Central reports officers down at the Wilson residence. All available units respond. Armed and dangerous suspect. The false alarm was designed to bring in officers unaware of the situation, potentially triggering a deadly confrontation. Maya needed to control the narrative before more corrupt officers arrived. She used her secure line to contact Detective Rodriguez, who answered immediately despite the late hour. "It's happening," she said simply. "Whitfield made his move. I have 5 of his men restrained and evidence of the entire conspiracy, but they're escalating, calling in false reports of officers down." "Stay put," Rodriguez replied, his voice tense. "I've already contacted Internal Affairs with the evidence you sent earlier. They're assembling a team, but it will take time. Can you hold your position?" "I'll try," Maya said, checking her security feeds again. "But more hostiles are incoming. If they're part of Whitfield's network, this could get ugly fast. Maya ended the call and quickly explained the situation to Marcus, who had been monitoring the restrained intruders. "We need to secure additional evidence," she told him. "One of these men mentioned documentation in their vehicles." Marcus nodded. "I'll go. You maintain control here." "Too dangerous, Maz," Maya countered. "I need you to coordinate with medical support for when this is over. I'll retrieve the documents." Before Marcus could argue, Maya signaled Storm to follow her and slipped out through a concealed exit she'd prepared specifically for emergencies. Using the darkness and her knowledge of the property's blind spots, she made her way to the intruders' vehicles parked down the street. The first vehicle yielded nothing, but in the second, hidden beneath the spare tire compartment, Maya discovered a laptop and several flash drives. As she secured these items, she heard vehicles approaching rapidly. Ducking into the shadows with Storm, she watched 3 unmarked cars speed toward her house, driven with the urgency of men responding to an officer-down call. Maya recognized a critical moment approaching. If these were corrupt officers from Whitfield's network, they would likely shoot first and justify it later. She needed to return to the house before they arrived, but the direct route was now blocked. "Storm, close cover," she whispered, and the dog pressed against her side as they took a longer route through neighboring yards. As they approached her property from the rear, Maya observed the new arrivals confronting the officers already on scene. The tension was palpable, with hands hovering near weapons as conflicting stories were exchanged. Maya slipped back into her house through the hidden entrance and rejoined Marcus. "We have minutes at most," she said, connecting the recovered laptop to a device that would quickly copy its contents to her secure servers. "These new arrivals are likely Whitfield's people. Once they realize he's been detained, they'll either back down or escalate dramatically." As if confirming her assessment, raised voices came from outside, followed by the distinctive sound of weapons being drawn. The confrontation between legitimate officers and Whitfield's corrupt network had begun. Maya had one final card to play. Using the house's external communication system, she broadcast the most damning evidence yet audio of Whitfield explicitly ordering the execution of a black homeowner. And the planting of evidence, coupled with financial records from the laptop showing the property scheme's connections to department officials. The effect was immediate. Several officers, clearly hearing this information for the first time, turned their weapons away from Maya's house and toward the new arrivals, who now found themselves surrounded and exposed. Inside, Maya prepared for the final confrontation. Whatever happened next would determine not just her fate, but potentially expose a conspiracy that had claimed multiple lives and corrupted an entire police department. Storm and Thunder took up defensive positions as banging came at the front door. This time, however, it wasn't an attack, but an authorized police captain, hands visible, requesting permission to enter and negotiate. The turning point had arrived. Maya's security monitors showed a tense standoff developing on her front lawn. The police captain, a white-haired veteran named Harrington, stood with hands visible while 2 distinct groups of officers had formed defensive positions. One group, clearly part of the legitimate response, had weapons trained on the second group, who had arrived responding to the false officer-down call. "Ms. Wilson," Captain Harrington called out, "I'm requesting permission to enter and discuss terms for resolving this situation peacefully. I give you my word, no harm will come to you under my authority." Maya studied the man's body language and tone. Her years in intelligence had taught her to read subtle cues that indicated truthfulness or deception. Harrington appeared genuine, but caution was still essential. "Captain, I'll allow you entry alone," Maya responded through the external speakers. "Any weapons must be left outside, and you'll be recorded the entire time." Harrington agreed immediately, removing his sidearm and placing it on the ground before approaching the door with hands raised. Maya directed Marcus to maintain surveillance while she met the captain in the entryway, Thunder at her side. The captain's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the imposing dog, but he maintained his composure. I understand you're protecting yourself, Ms. Wilson, but we have a volatile situation developing out there. I need your cooperation to prevent potential casualties. My cooperation has always been available to legitimate law enforcement, Captain, Maya replied evenly. What's been lacking is yours. I've documented weeks of escalating harassment culminating in tonight's assault with clear evidence of police involvement. To demonstrate, Maya played selected audio recordings from the night's events, including Whitfield's explicit orders regarding her execution and evidence planting. Harrington's expression darkened as he listened. I knew we had problems in the department, but this— he shook his head. This is beyond what I imagined. There's more, Maya said, leading him to where the 5 restrained intruders sat under Marcus's watchful eye. 3 of these men are current officers in your department. The other 2 are former officers working for Whitfield's private security company, and they've admitted to previous operations against other minority homeowners. As if to underscore her point, the police radio on one of the restrained men crackled to life. Team 2 report status. Has the target been neutralized? Area is getting too hot with responding units. Maya raised an eyebrow at Harrington. That would be the second team Whitfield called in when his first group failed. They're getting impatient. Harrington's jaw tightened as he took the radio. This is Captain Harrington. All officers at this location are ordered to stand down immediately and surrender their weapons to the uniformed officers on scene. Any failure to comply will result in immediate suspension and criminal charges. The radio remained silent for several seconds before a terse response came through. Copy that. But the tone suggested anything but compliance. Outside Maya's security feeds showed the officers from the second wave glancing at each other nervously. They were assessing options, weighing loyalty to Whitfield's network against their careers and freedom. 3 immediately placed their weapons on the ground and raised their hands. 2 others backed slowly toward their vehicles. They're going to run, Maya observed, the ones most deeply involved. Harrington was already speaking into his department radio, ordering roadblocks and interception. Within moments, sirens blared as patrol cars moved to cut off escape routes. Inside, Harrington turned to Maya with newfound respect in his expression. You've handled this situation with remarkable restraint, Ms. Wilson. Most civilians would have escalated to deadly force, given the provocation. I'm not most civilians, Captain, and escalation would have played into their narrative. Maya gestured to the captured intruders. That's exactly what they wanted, a terrified black woman shooting at what appeared to be police officers. The perfect justification for deadly force. Harrington nodded grimly. We have a lot of cleanup to do in the department. This conspiracy clearly runs deeper than Whitfield. As they discussed next steps, Maya's security system alerted to new movement at the neighborhood perimeter. Checking the feeds, she saw multiple unmarked vehicles approaching the police blockade. Not police cars, but civilian SUVs with darkened windows. We have another problem, she told Harrington, pointing to the monitors. Whitfield called in his private security contractors. The vehicles stopped at the blockade, and men in tactical gear emerged, presenting identification to the officers. After a brief conversation, they were allowed through. What the hell? Harrington muttered, reaching for his radio. Who authorized civilian security to enter an active police scene? Before he could get an answer, Maya's exterior cameras caught movement on neighboring rooftops, snipers taking position. The private contractors weren't there to assist police. They were there to eliminate witnesses and evidence. We're being surrounded, Maya said calmly, activating her home's defensive lockdown. Whitfield's not just running a harassment campaign. He's operating a paramilitary force with police cooperation. Through the windows, they could see the private security contractors deploying in tactical formation, establishing a perimeter that was pushing legitimate police officers outward. Harrington's radio erupted with confused chatter as officers reported being ordered to fall back by men claiming federal authority. This isn't federal, Harrington growled, recognizing the deception. "This is a private coup." Maya made a split-second decision. Using her military-grade communication system, she broadcast all incoming surveillance feeds to every police vehicle's computer system simultaneously, along with audio of the private contractor's communications. "Attention all officers!" Her voice rang through police speakers. "You are being deceived by private contractors working for Charles Whitfield. These men are not federal agents. They are mercenaries attempting to cover up multiple homicides and civil rights violations. All communication and movement is being recorded and transmitted to federal authorities and media outlets." The psychological warfare tactic created immediate confusion among the contractors who hadn't expected their communications to be compromised. Maya pressed the advantage using her external sound system to broadcast their own radio chatter back to them, creating feedback loops and disorientation. "I'm also transmitting their current positions to your vehicle systems," she told Harrington, sending tactical data showing sniper locations and team positions. Harrington immediately relayed this information to his officers, who began countering the contractor's movements. What had been a smooth takeover operation dissolved into chaos as the contractors realized their tactical advantage had vanished. Inside, Maya prepared for the possibility that some contractors might still breach the house. She positioned Thunder and Storm at key points while Marcus moved the restrained intruders to a secure interior room. "If they get inside, we fall back to position 3, she told him, referring to their predetermined defensive plan. Outside, the standoff between police and contractors escalated when one contractor raised his weapon toward an officer. Before he could fire, precise shots from police marksmen disabled him and another contractor who had been moving into firing position. The remaining contractors, realizing their operation was compromised and facing overwhelming police response, began a tactical retreat. Some surrendered immediately, while others attempted to flee the scene. Maya watched through her security feeds as Harrington coordinated the police response, systematically containing the threat. The tide had turned. Within 20 minutes, police had secured the entire perimeter and taken all remaining contractors into custody. As the situation stabilized, Harrington returned to Maya's front door. "We've contained the immediate threat, but this isn't over. Whitfield's network clearly extends beyond what we've seen tonight. I need your evidence and testimony to dismantle it completely." Maya nodded but maintained her cautious stance. "My evidence goes to Internal Affairs, the FBI Civil Rights Division, and the State Attorney General simultaneously. No exclusive access that could allow this to be buried." Harrington accepted her terms without argument, a final confirmation of his legitimacy. As dawn broke over the neighborhood, Maya stood at her window, watching police process the scene. The night's events had exposed a conspiracy that had operated in shadows for years, targeting minority homeowners with the resources and authority of law enforcement. But questions remained. How far did the network extend? Who else in positions of power was involved? And would the system that had allowed such corruption to flourish actually hold the perpetrators accountable? As emergency vehicles departed and crime scene technicians worked methodically across her property, Maya knew one thing with certainty. This was not the end, but merely the first battle in a longer war for justice. And she was just getting started. The morning sun illuminated a scene of controlled chaos around Maya's property. Police evidence technicians in white coveralls methodically documented every aspect of the night's events, while Internal Affairs investigators interviewed officers who had responded to the various calls. Maya observed the activity from her living room, Thunder and Storm resting vigilantly at her feet. Both dogs were exhausted but unharmed, save for a minor cut on Thunder's leg where he'd encountered broken glass while subduing one of the intruders. Marcus had cleaned and bandaged the wound, assuring Maya it wouldn't require veterinary attention. Their moment of quiet was interrupted by a knock at the door. Captain Harrington stood outside with a woman in a dark suit who introduced herself as Special Agent Teresa Vasquez of the FBI Civil Rights Division. "We received your evidence uploads approximately 2 hours ago," Vasquez explained as Maya invited them in. "I was already in Atlanta investigating pattern and practice violations. Your situation appears connected to several cases on our radar." Maya led them to her home office where multiple screens displayed security footage, communications logs, and documentation she'd gathered over the past weeks. "Everything is organized chronologically," she explained, bringing up a timeline of events. "The harassment began the day I moved in and escalated systematically. Last night was the culmination, but not the beginning." Agent Vasquez reviewed the evidence with professional detachment, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Captain Harrington looked increasingly disturbed as the full picture emerged. "This operation has apparently been running for at least 5 years," Vasquez noted, examining the financial records Maya had recovered. "We're seeing similar patterns in select neighborhoods across 3 counties. Minority homeowners targeted forced out through harassment or worse properties acquired by shell companies, then resold at profit, with police protection and participation." Maya added, "The corruption extends through multiple levels of local law enforcement." Harrington's expression hardened. "Not my entire department. The majority of my officers are honorable people, doing their best under difficult circumstances." "Perhaps," Maya acknowledged, "but enough were involved to make this operation possible, and those who weren't actively participating were conditioned to look the other way." Their discussion was interrupted by commotion outside. Maya checked her security feeds to see several news vans arriving at the neighborhood entrance along with a group of residents gathering near the police barricade. Among them, Maya recognized Dr. Elaine Johnson and several other minority homeowners from nearby communities. "The story's breaking," Vasquez observed. "We need to get ahead of this narrative." "Ms. Wilson," Harrington said, his tone formal, "given the circumstances, I need to ask for your cooperation in a controlled surrender to my officers." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Surrender on what charges?" "Temporarily," Harrington clarified, "for your protection and to maintain procedural integrity. You did detain 5 men, including 3 police officers. While the circumstances clearly justify your actions, we need to follow proper protocols." Maya considered his request carefully. Surrendering herself to police custody, even temporarily, carried significant risks given what she now knew about the department's corruption. Yet refusing would potentially undermine the legitimate investigation and play into Whitfield's narrative of her as a dangerous aggressor. "I'll cooperate under specific conditions," she decided. "Agent Vasquez remains present throughout. My brother serves as my medical proxy. All processing is live-streamed to my attorneys. And Thunder and Storm are secured by animal control officers with body cameras not left to potentially disappear or be harmed." Harrington agreed to her terms, and they developed a plan for a controlled exit from the house. Before implementing it, Maya took a moment to check on the restrained intruders who had been monitored by Marcus throughout the morning. The young officer who had provided information looked up as she entered. "What happens to us now?" he asked, fear evident in his voice. "That depends on your continued cooperation," Maya replied. "Those who testify truthfully about Whitfield's operation may find leniency. Those who obstruct justice won't." Outside, Maya followed the agreed-upon protocol, exiting with hands visible and allowing herself to be formally detained by officers selected by Harrington personally. As cameras captured the scene, she maintained a dignified composure, her military bearing evident even in these circumstances. What Whitfield had intended as her humiliation and elimination had transformed into a powerful image of resistance and strength. Thunder and Storm were led out separately by specialized canine officers who treated the dogs with appropriate respect for their training and capabilities. Within hours, Maya found herself in an unusual position at police headquarters. Nominally in custody, she was in reality at the center of a rapidly expanding investigation. In a conference room rather than an interrogation cell, she provided detailed statements to a joint task force of FBI agents, internal affairs investigators, and prosecutors from the district attorney's office. Dr. Johnson arrived with 3 other minority homeowners who had experienced similar harassment. Each brought documentation supporting Maya's allegations of a systematic campaign targeting them based on race. As they compared notes, a disturbing pattern emerged. Not only had they all experienced escalating harassment after moving into predominantly white neighborhoods, but they had all reported these incidents to police with minimal response. They were documenting us even as they dismissed our complaints, Dr. Johnson realized reviewing the evidence, creating a paper trail of problematic residents to justify later actions. By late afternoon, the investigation had expanded significantly. Whitfield's private security company offices were raided, yielding extensive records of community protection operations across multiple neighborhoods. 4 additional police officers were placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Most significantly, search warrants were executed at the homes of 2 assistant police chiefs and a city council member. The turning point came when Detective Rodriguez arrived with internal affairs investigators. He brought with him servers removed from a private office within police headquarters containing communications between Whitfield and high-ranking department officials. They had their own shadow dispatch system, Rodriguez explained, displaying logs of unofficial operations targeting minority residents, complete with code words and off-the-books assignments for trusted officers. As evening approached, Maya's formal status shifted from detainee to key witness. The evidence she'd gathered, combined with material recovered through the expanding investigation, had built an irrefutable case against Whitfield and his network. Captain Harrington, his own position secured by his actions during the crisis, approached Maya with what appeared to be genuine remorse. "We failed you," he acknowledged, "not just as a department, but as a community sworn to protect all citizens equally." "The failure began long before I arrived," Maya replied. "The question now is whether you're prepared to make fundamental changes, not just prosecute a few bad actors while the system that enabled them remains intact." Agent Vasquez joined them, bringing news that federal civil rights charges were being prepared against 27 individuals connected to Whitfield's operation. "This will be one of the largest police corruption cases in recent history," she noted, "and it wouldn't have been possible without your evidence and resistance." As Maya prepared to finally return home escorted by federal agents rather than local police, she caught sight of Charles Whitfield being led to a transport vehicle. Their eyes met briefly across the parking lot. Where he had expected to see fear, he instead encountered unshakable determination. In that moment, the power dynamic that had defined their conflict permanently shifted. The predator had become the prey. At Maya's house, a small crowd of supporters had gathered, held back by police barricades but visible from her driveway. Among them, neighbors who had never spoken to her before now held signs reading "Justice for Maya" and "End Police Corruption." The community was being forced to confront its complicity in the system Whitfield had exploited. Inside, Maya reunited with Thunder and Storm, who had been well cared for by specialized canine officers during her absence. As she checked them for any signs of mistreatment, finding none, Marcus updated her on developments from their legal team. "This is just beginning," he warned. "They'll try to contain the damage, sacrifice Whitfield and a few officers while protecting the broader system." Maya nodded, already formulating her next steps. "Then we'll need to ensure the evidence reaches those who can't be silenced or bought." As night fell on a day that had transformed both her life and the community around her, Maya stood at her window looking out at the neighborhood that had tried to reject her. What Whitfield and his network hadn't understood was that they hadn't targeted a victim. They had challenged a warrior who understood that some battles must be fought, not just for personal survival, but for all those who would come after. And this war was far from over. 3 months after the night that exposed Whitfield's network, Maya sat on her front porch watching Thunder and Storm patrol the perimeter of her property. The dogs had recovered fully from their ordeal, though Thunder still favored his right front leg slightly when tired. The same could not be said for Maya's neighborhood, which remained transformed by the aftermath of what local media had dubbed the Oakwood Conspiracy. Oakwood Estates had become ground zero for a federal civil rights investigation that uncovered decades of systematic discrimination across multiple police jurisdictions. The evidence Maya had gathered that night, combined with data recovered from Whitfield's operation, revealed a network far more extensive than anyone had initially suspected. Charles Whitfield now awaited trial on 37 federal charges, including civil rights violations, conspiracy, attempted murder, and racketeering. He had been denied bail after prosecutors demonstrated his extensive connections and flight risk. 19 police officers from 3 jurisdictions had been indicted, along with 7 civilian accomplices, including 2 local politicians and a judge who had signed fraudulent warrants. The financial investigation had traced over $12 million in illicit profits from property schemes targeting minority homeowners. Perhaps most significantly, the Justice Department had placed the entire police department under consent decree, mandating comprehensive reforms in training oversight and community engagement. Maya's telephone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Agent Vasquez was calling with updates on the case. The last of Whitfield's contractors took a plea deal this morning, the FBI agent reported. He's agreed to testify about operations dating back 7 years, including 3 deaths previously ruled accidental or justified. Any chance of overturning those rulings? Maya asked, watching as doctors. Johnson jogged past her house, waving as she continued her morning route. Their shared experience had forged an unexpected friendship between the 2 women. Already in process, Vasquez confirmed. The U.S. attorney is personally reviewing each case. The families will finally get justice along with significant settlements for wrongful death. After ending the call, Maya checked her calendar for the day. Her schedule had become increasingly busy as her role had evolved from victim to advocate. The nonprofit organization she had established, Secure Communities Initiative, had already assisted 15 families experiencing housing discrimination and intimidation across 5 states. Using her cybersecurity expertise, Maya had developed a digital early warning system that helped targeted homeowners document harassment and connect with legal resources before situations escalated. The system identified patterns of discriminatory behavior by analyzing complaint data and public records, creating an accountability network that law enforcement couldn't ignore. Thunder, alerted to a vehicle approaching his posture, relaxed but attentive. Maya recognized Captain Harrington's unmarked police car as it pulled into her driveway. In the months since the incident, Harrington had become an unexpected ally working from within the department to implement reforms that went beyond the federal requirements. "Good morning, Ms. Wilson." He greeted her, carrying a folder as he approached the porch. "I have some documents for your review before the community oversight meeting tomorrow." Maya invited him inside, where Marcus was preparing breakfast. Her brother had extended his leave and eventually transferred to a medical center in Atlanta, unwilling to return to his previous posting until he was confident Maya was secure. "The new training protocols are ready for implementation," Harrington explained, spreading documents across the dining table. "Developed with input from civil rights attorneys and community representatives. Every officer will complete 40 hours of bias recognition and prevention training with quarterly refreshers and continuous evaluation." Maya reviewed the materials with a critical eye. Her experience in military intelligence had taught her that systems only changed when accountability was built into their foundation. What about the early intervention triggers? Have those been implemented in the dispatch and reporting systems? Harrington nodded. Any officer receiving 3 or more complaints within a 6-month period undergoes automatic review regardless of the complaint's status. And all stops and interventions in minority neighborhoods are now recorded and analyzed for pattern discrepancies. Their discussion was interrupted by Maya's security system announcing visitors at the community entrance. The video feed showed 3 families being escorted by Dr. Johnson. The new residents, Maya explained to Harrington's questioning look, first-time homebuyers participating in the Neighborhood Integration Program. This initiative, perhaps the most significant outcome of the Oakwood case, provided support and security for minority families moving into previously segregated communities. With backing from civil rights organizations and federal housing agencies, the program ensured that what happened to Maya would not happen to others. After Harrington departed, Maya welcomed the new families to her home. Among them was a young black couple with twin daughters, a Latino family with teenage sons, and a mixed-race couple expecting their first child. All had been hesitant about moving into Oakwood Estates given its recent history, but the community's transformation had created unprecedented opportunities for affordable housing in a desirable school district. "We've installed security systems in each of your homes," Maya explained, demonstrating the monitoring app on her tablet. "Any suspicious activity is immediately flagged and recorded, but honestly, I don't think you'll need it. The neighborhood has changed significantly." Indeed, Oakwood Estates had undergone a remarkable evolution. When the full extent of Whitfield's operation became public, many residents were horrified to learn how their community had been manipulated. Several families who had participated in the harassment campaign had moved away, unable to face their neighbors after their complicity was exposed. Those who remained had committed to rebuilding the community on principles of inclusion and accountability. Later that afternoon, Maya attended the final hearing regarding the false police report filed against her during the incident. As expected, the charges had been dismissed with prejudice, formally clearing her name. More surprising was the public apology delivered by the police chief, acknowledging the department's failure to protect her and its complicity in the discrimination she had faced. While we cannot undo the trauma Ms. Wilson experienced, the chief stated, cameras capturing his every word, we can ensure that her courage leads to lasting change in how we serve and protect all communities, regardless of race or background. As Maya left the courthouse, she encountered the young officer whose cooperation had helped break the case. No longer in uniform, he had entered a witness protection program after testifying against his former colleagues. "I almost didn't recognize you," Maya acknowledged, noting his changed appearance. "Are you doing all right?" He nodded cautiously. "Starting over in another state next month, criminal justice program at State University. I want to understand how systems fail and how to fix them." "That's a worthy pursuit," Maya replied. "Sometimes it takes experiencing failure firsthand to recognize the need for change." That evening, Maya hosted the first meeting of the Oakwood Estates Neighborhood Watch, a diverse group committed to community safety through cooperation rather than exclusion. The gathering filled her living room with residents from various backgrounds, sharing concerns and suggestions. Thunder and storm moved among the guests, their presence a reminder of the night that had catalyzed this transformation. As the meeting concluded, Dr. Johnson raised her glass in a toast. "To Maya Wilson, who showed us that sometimes justice requires standing your ground, even when the entire system is aligned against you." The group applauded, but Maya shook her head slightly. "Justice isn't just about one person standing ground," she corrected. "It's about creating systems where no one has to fight alone. What happened here wasn't just my victory. It belongs to everyone who refused to accept discrimination as normal, everyone who spoke up despite fear, and everyone committed to building something better." Looking around the room at faces of various colors, ages, and backgrounds, Maya recognized that Whitfield's greatest failure hadn't been underestimating her capabilities. It had been believing that communities must be divided by race to thrive. The diverse group before her, united in purpose, despite their differences, proved the bankruptcy of his vision. As the guests departed, Maya stood on her porch, watching them return to homes throughout the neighborhood. Thunder and storm sat attentively at her side, guardians of a peace hard won but worth protecting. The community that had once conspired to drive her away now looked to her for leadership. The system that had been weaponized against her was being reformed with her input, and the home she had refused to abandon had become a symbol of resistance and change. Justice had been served not just through prosecutions and penalties, but through transformation of the conditions that had allowed injustice to flourish. And in that transformation lay Maya's true victory. What would you do if you witnessed discrimination in your community? Would you stand up like Maya, or stay silent out of fear? Comment below with your thoughts on how we can all work to create more just communities. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more powerful stories of courage and resistance. Share this video with someone who needs to understand that systemic change begins with individuals brave enough to stand their ground. Thank you for listening, and remember that justice isn't just served in courtrooms, but in the daily choices we make to treat each other with dignity and respect. Maya Wilson's story teaches us that true justice requires both individual courage and systemic change. When facing discrimination, the easy path is retreat. But meaningful transformation demands we stand firm against injustice. Maya's military intelligence background gave her tactical advantages, but her moral strength was the true weapon that exposed corruption and reformed her community. Her story reminds us that racist systems persist because good people remain silent. By meticulously documenting evidence, building alliances, and refusing intimidation, Maya transformed from target to catalyst for change. The conspiracy against her revealed how racism often hides behind official authority and community standards. Yet her response shows that preparation meets opportunity when we refuse to be victims. Most importantly, Maya understood that justice isn't just personal vindication, it's creating systems where nobody fights discrimination alone. By establishing support networks for other minority homeowners and working within reformed institutions, she ensured her victory would protect others facing similar battles. Remember, systemic racism falls not just through exposing corrupt individuals, but by rebuilding communities based on inclusion and accountability. What experiences with discrimination have you witnessed or experienced in your own community? Have you ever had to stand up against injustice, like Maya did? Comment below with your story or thoughts on how we can create more inclusive neighborhoods. If this powerful account of courage against racist systems resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of resilience and justice. Share this video with someone who needs to understand how systemic racism operates and how it can be dismantled through documentation, preparation, and unwavering resolve. Thank you for listening, and remember that each of us has the power to transform our communities when we refuse to accept discrimination as inevitable.